be recorded. Please leave your video off and muted, and you can participate via the chat. And just as a reminder, please fill out the evaluation at the end. I'll put the link into the chat so you will have that readily available. Now I'm going to sign off and hand it over to you, Gina.
Great, thank you. Well, hi everyone. Thanks for joining me. I do recognize it is the 4 o'clock, the last group of the sessions after a long first day of conference. So I am so grateful to see you all here today. I am Gina Persichini. I'm an instructional design consultant at Boise State University in our eCampus Center. At eCampus Center, we work with faculty across the university. We have many things that we do. One of the things we do is work with faculty to develop online courses and online programs, fully online programs. So we take their subject expertise, combine it with our instructional design expertise, and a great team of developers and course builders that put together these online learning programs. And I will say, I'll probably refer to the developers and my other team members at some point. And I fully understand, having previously worked in a department of one, how lucky I am to work in a department with sub-teams and many people involved in the e-course creation process. So please know that when I talk about my team, I do understand that sometimes we are a team doing all of these different tasks ourselves. So I'm going to share this presentation with you, try and share the screen. And I did want to give you a little heads up. I'm going to use Slido for a couple questions, a couple easy questions in the beginning, and ask for some brainstorming time later on. So if you are able to, I would encourage you to be prepared for the introverts among us who want to have some time thinking about what kind of participation we'll have ahead. I count myself among those, by the way. So let's talk about you to get started. So I just have a couple quick questions for you. Somewhere, there it is. So if you can hop over into Slido, there's a link in the chat stream just to make it easy for you. If you want to open that up in a browser, at the top of your window, you're going to want to put in that participation code, the participant code Z620. I'm just trying to get an idea of who's here and where your interests might lie as we talk about things. So thanks for that. We're kind of a mix, and we're a small group, but we have a mix of interests in here. So that's something that I'll try to keep in mind as we go through. You don't care about just the instructional design piece that we do. Next question is to get an idea of your organization. If you would be willing to share with me what organization or what LMS your organization uses. We have Moodle. I know my organization, and I will talk about the LMS a couple times. At the time we did this project, we were using Blackboard Learn. We are currently in the process of migrating to Canvas. So it is actually going to impact some of the things if we repeat this assignment. Thank you for sharing some information. And I'm going to go on now, and I want to talk about some background for this project that we worked on. And here's the point of this. When I say we, there were a lot of people involved in this. There were a lot of people involved in putting together this program. I don't have room to list everybody, but listed here on the screen are the faculty who were involved in conceiving of this interprofessional education activity. They wanted to find a way to bring their two cohorts together to learn from each other. From the eCampus Center, we have a team of instructional designers who then work with a development team and builders. Most of what I talk about today is going to be from the instructional design team perspective. My colleague Nicole Dickey and I were the instructional designers assigned to these two separate course projects that ended up merging together into a project that sort of intersected in a way. So not unlike developing an online learning program, healthcare is a team sport. So let's talk about interprofessional education, what this is all about. I think most of us have probably had an experience with healthcare at some time or another. For example, you know that a hospital visit might include a team of caregivers that includes doctors and nurses and therapists and medical technologists. So many people are involved in your care at a medical facility, whether it's a hospital, whether it's your doctor's office. It's really nearly impossible for a patient to undergo some kind of medical treatment without a mix of professionals taking part. And this is the reason that interprofessional education is important to healthcare education. So interprofessional education, IPE is how I may refer to it, is when two or more professions learn together. They learn with each other and they learn from each other. The goal is to break down the boundaries. We want to foster a team approach to treating patients. So traditionally, this could be part of professional development. Healthcare workers do like we do. They're going to conferences and workshops and seminars, and they're connecting together as a part of their continuing education. But since the early 1970s, interprofessional education has become a core part of healthcare education for students. So training our professionals before they enter the workplace. An example of an in-person IPE might be when classes get together, they meet in a lab, or when their students are doing internships out on their field work. I know an example where physical therapy students got together with physician's assistant students and have shared lab time. That's something that takes place at a neighboring university near us at Boise State. But we were challenged with this idea that we're going to bring together these two cohorts and do an interprofessional education activity completely online. Students scattered across the United States, possibly elsewhere. So we needed to find a way to put this together for an online cohort. So the leaders of the genetic counseling and the respiratory care master's programs at Boise State wanted to merge their cohorts just a little bit, more of an intersection, less of a merge. Both programs had outcomes that relate to teaching methods. In this particular semester that we were working on, the genetic counseling students would be creating we're creating material to share with the families of children who had a genetic condition. The respiratory care program has peer-to-peer education throughout the whole program, but this would be an opportunity that they could practice sharing beyond their own professional peers and even possibly to individuals who did not have a healthcare or medical background. Both courses had a 7-week course that took place in the 3rd semester of their programs. The genetic counseling course was just 1 credit, but respiratory care was 3 credits. So their workloads were different. A lot of the surrounding activities were going to be different, but they were consistent in that both would address a respiratory condition with a genetic foundation. The assignment was really done in 3 parts. So students participated throughout the semester, submitted in 3 different places. They had their group presentation, which had to they worked together in groups with both genetic counseling and respiratory care students together, where they needed to deliver a panel presentation. Sometimes it was less a panel presentation and more of a gathering of professionals who were discussing a particular issue or a particular patient, which sometimes happens. So they needed to explore the genetic respiratory condition, address the genetics of it, address the treatment of a pulmonary issue, and create and be able to share information for treating the patient. The presentation would have a peer feedback component after it was submitted, so that it needed to be viewable by everybody. And then after and during the peer evaluations, those groups continued to work together, and they created a patient education tool. And what you're seeing on the screen now is one of the results of that. One of the groups put together a brochure that would be used to share with families or caregivers or the patient after they have been diagnosed, or in order to share more information. So all of this seems pretty easy. Like, we just have to get them together. They have to do a presentation, they have to submit it, they have to do peer feedback, submit a document or a website or something like that. It seemed like no problem, right? What kinds of challenges might we encounter? And so I'm going to ask you, let's have a little fun. Let's say you were just assigned this. You want to bring together students from 2 different cohorts. So 2 different academic departments are going to meet for a portion of a semester to work on group projects together. So let's go back to Slido. And just in case, I'll send you the link again. You can link right to it. Share some of the challenges that you think you might encounter if you were assigned this task. I'm sure you're all just typing up a storm. That's right. Differences in pre-existing knowledge was shared in the chat, and absolutely. That would be in differences in pre-existing knowledge is something that it was actually a benefit in the end. The students ended up teaching each other about the same condition, but from a different background. It became a real positive outcome of it. Scheduling meeting times. Scheduling meeting times when they have a busy schedule. We are absolutely going to talk about their busy schedule too. Well, I'm going to move us on a little bit. And while I'm going to move away from this slide, do feel free to keep sharing in the chat if you'd like. So the challenge before us, this is the easy part. I just needed to find a way. All we want is students to be able to get information from their instructors. We want them to be able to interact with their peers from another class. And we want them to be able to submit assignments in a way that someone from a different class can view it and leave comments on it. We also need, particularly for the instructors, we want the instructions to be consistent in both courses. We need a way for instructors to interact with students, not only in their own course, but in the other course as well. But at the same time, we want our instructors to maintain their own grade book. They want to only do the grading for their own students. They want to provide feedback to everybody, but they're going to grade and maintain their own grade book. For the most part, this seems like it shouldn't have been too hard. And maybe now that I've done it, I think, oh, it's really not too hard. I've been thinking about different ways to do it too. But there are some challenges that we really had to deal with. And they're going to start with privacy, FERPA laws. The issue of privacy, we have to consider how are we going to protect student privacy and prevent their contact information from unauthorized distribution. A statement that's really clear in, in some of our guidelines at the university. And how would we limit access to student data by somebody who is not their instructor? And in addition to privacy, I needed to think about accessibility. How are we going to ensure that the assignment, the interface, and any communication tools they might use would meet the accessibility standards of the university? And then at our institution, we have a primary course structure. We also sometimes call it a master course structure. So we like to create a clean copy of a course, create this main copy of it, and then make a copy each semester when it's taught. That way, regular updates take place in the master copy, and we make a copy of that into the teaching shell each semester. So anything we created or any outside tool we utilized needed to be able to work and still function within that system. And the more adjustments we make, so we had to rely on instructors doing a lot of the setup every semester in dealing with technology settings. The more adjustments like that had to be made, we had more opportunities for error. More opportunity for errors meant more potential to disrupting student learning. So dealing with it within this way that we create courses became really important. And then really it all still came back to the interactions. This was core to everything we were going to do. How are we going to take students who are otherwise have this firewall between them? How are we going to get them to talk together and share assignments with each other? At the time we were using Blackboard, and Blackboard wouldn't work for it, not because it wasn't fully functional, it could do a lot of what we wanted to do, but the issues we had came to those privacy issues. Everything built into the system to protect student privacy, whether it was in Blackboard itself or within the registration system and how we bring students into Blackboard, those created the barriers. So they're protecting student data, but at the same time making hard for us to bring students together and link them up. So that was our challenge. What are we going to do? How are we going to do this? We're going to need another tool. We're going to need something outside of it. How can we bring folks together? So after some conversations with our colleagues, like I mentioned at the start, we are very privileged to have a whole development team that works alongside us. So they have more technology exposure, and they have more experience in actually building out some of the things. We like to design for the course and then let the technology work for what we need. But we had to design this assignment and then find a tool that would work for us. And they recommended we take a closer look at Piazza. Piazza billed itself as, and I quote, the incredibly easy, completely free Q&A platform. It had the tools we needed to create groups, to create group space for students to work together. It had, we could have threaded discussions so students could work on those comments and peer reviews with each other. It would require some additional setup by the teaching faculty, but we were pretty confident that we could simplify things enough. We could do enough setup up front and create some instructions for them to make it work even for somebody completely new to Piazza. And the best thing of all, it was already approved by our IT department. Because the IT had previously used it for something, that meant it had gone through all of the privacy and accessibility requirements. And that was everything for me. It's a long process to request new software to get approved. So while we have an assignment we want to do, we have a technology solution to make it happen. Now we've got to plan and get it done. So we had two separate projects. They actually started as two individual course projects. And while they actually remained that way, we did do a lot of coordination across our teams. So on the instructional design side, we shared the load with each of us taking a different focus. My colleague, Nicole, she focused on the student-facing content. She worked with faculty to design the assignment, create the instructions, create a great experience in terms of the assignment. And she made sure that the instructions for the assignment piece of it were consistent across both of the courses. I focused on the technology piece of our puzzle, figuring out how do we move students between Blackboard to Piazza, back to Blackboard again? How do we get them back and forth and as fluidly as possible? We needed consistent instructions for faculty. So we needed the students to know how to use Piazza, but we also needed something for faculty to know how to set it up. If they repeat this assignment, it may not be the same faculty teaching it the next time. So I can't trust that somebody's just going to know how to do this. I might have new faculty, maybe they're adjuncts, maybe it's another person from the department teaching this course. So I need to have something ready for them to launch their course. Luckily, Piazza let us do a similar structure that we do with our courses in Blackboard. We were able to create kind of a master copy of the course in Piazza. And then each semester, the faculty would just go back to that copy and go back to the master, make a copy of it for the semester that they were teaching in. So it was a pretty similar process. So we didn't have to do as much training around how we were going to manage the workflow. So we get this assignment designed, we get it built in Blackboard, in Piazza, and then the course gets rolled out. So the courses were first offered in summer of 2020. What were you all doing last summer? It was pandemic time. So these students are already learning online. So they wouldn't see a change in their courses. It'd be easy to say that there was a pandemic, but they didn't have a change. Everything was fine. But that's not really the case. These are healthcare students. And honestly, even if they weren't healthcare students, we all had extra stress going on around us with the pandemic. But these students, they are already working in some capacity, a healthcare profession. Because of the pandemic, they have this extra burden as a part of their day jobs. They've got a shortage of personal protective equipment. And this is like a domino effect happening. Shortage of personal protective equipment meant that their field placements were in jeopardy for the coming semesters, for the current semester and the next semester. Without their field placements that are required for graduation and certification, now their graduation timeline is in question. So these students have a lot of stress going on, and we're about to introduce an assignment that uses a piece of a technology tool they've never used before. So it was a little bit worrisome. Like, how are we going to get this done? So at the time we roll it out, we've got 18 respiratory care students and 12 genetic counseling students enrolled in the courses. In week one, they sign up for Piazza. They have their groups assigned. In week two, they are assigned their topics, and they are encouraged to meet together. There's a prompt for them in their learning materials, and that's going to come up later. So they're prompted to work together in week two, get the ball rolling, work on things. We recommended a presentation rehearsal in week four, but it was week 5 when the presentation was due. They needed to record their presentation, which could look something like this. It could look like a conference presentation or a panel presentation, or it could look like a collaborative team meeting. After they turn that in week 5, they start their peer evaluations. While the peer evaluations are going on, they're working on their patient education tool. So they're designing a website, a brochure, a pamphlet. The tool was their choice. They could choose the format of it, but they needed to find a way to share some information about a pretty heavy topic, with the patient's caregivers, with somebody who does not necessarily have a medical background. That was due in week 6 of a 7-week course. So it's also pretty tight, and it's a pretty tight timeline for all of it. We get through it all. And by we, at that point, I mean the instructors and the students. They get through their 7-week program. I'm hearing nice things once in a while from the faculty. They're like, it's going well, it's going well. But we really wanted to know what was happening. So we decided to do a survey of the students. I worked with faculty to put together a survey to get some information that both they wanted to know and that we wanted to know from the instructional design side of it. We wanted to know, were they meeting the learning objectives? That was the core, right? They had a goal in mind. Did we meet it? Did the technology work? So was Piazza helpful? Were there technology challenges we didn't know about? I wanted to get some feedback on how this tool worked that we had never used before in my department. So how did the groups work together? Piazza had a space for them to do their groups. They had this kind of group workspace that they could use. And I wanted to know how that worked. Did they use it? What did they do? And outside of all that technology, we really wanted to know, how do they feel about this assignment? This was something new, creating an interprofessional education for a completely online program. So we wanted to know, would you recommend we do this again? Well, we asked them a lot of questions and they gave us a lot of answers. And so to start, those learning objectives, did we meet them? Yes, absolutely. The students liked the assignment and they did well. Grades on all 3 aspects of the assignment were strong. I think everything was an A. When the students were surveyed, 94% agreed or strongly agreed that they had a better understanding of the topic. In fact, students told us in their open comments that they really improved their ability to communicate. Their confidence was building when in working with other professionals. Because we know it's one thing to be able to talk about our profession with each other, but quite another thing to find yourself in the workplace and having to speak knowledgeably about something you just learned and feel professional in it. And when that information that you're about to share impacts the health of another human being, there's a lot of pressure in that. So building their confidence and being able to communicate and work with other professionals was a really big deal. So then, did the technology work? The technology worked. I will tell you that. No question, the technology worked. Was it seamless? Was it a flawless experience for the students? Not so much. Not as much as I wanted, actually. So moving back and forth between the 2 platforms, from Blackboard to Piazza and back again, this was distracting for students. While a link was provided, just 83% agreed that they could move easily between the 2 tools. A couple students actually used the word clunky. I didn't love reading that. Everyone successfully posted their assignments in Piazza, but only 82% agreed that it was easy to interact with their peers when they did so. Some of the challenges they experienced, we asked them a lot of open-ended questions to get some feedback. So when we asked them about these challenges, they pointed out the interface, but more than the interface, they actually pointed out the issue of just yet another tool. They're a little done with new technology tools. Students have enough on their plates, particularly in the midst of a pandemic, and asking them to go to a third-party tool created some unnecessary cognitive load for them. The feedback to the students actually led me back to literature. I found studies supporting a 1994 study addressing interactions in the course that we need to consider more than just our standard student to student, student to content, student to teacher interactions. We need to remember to consider our student to interface interactions and consider that when we're designing a course. Other research showed that the impact of interface on cognitive load, honestly, not just for students, also in the workplace. Something we might have all experienced this year. How many people have had a year of pandemic Zooming, more so than usual anyway. One study in particular pointed out something they refer to as technology crowding. They suggest that at some point, having too many functions in a tool can actually decrease the usefulness of that tool. So this is the case where too much is too much. So while I feel confident that the technology didn't negatively impact the assignment, I take seriously the experience of students who felt that the technology tool was a barrier. They achieved the intended outcomes, but not without some struggle. But I want to be clear on this. We do not blame Piazza. Yes, not everybody loved Piazza, but we were looking at 83% of agreement, which really isn't horrible. I mean, there's a lot to learn from that, but 83% agreement with the ability to navigate between the tools is pretty good. So I don't think we're doing too bad. And I don't think that it's Piazza. All of the comments, not all of the comments, that's not fair to say. Most of the comments really had to do with using another piece of technology. It was not about Piazza so much as it was about yet another thing to deal with. So while they had Piazza, though, they had Piazza and they had this place to coordinate their work and do their group work, I wanted to know how that worked for them. How did they communicate with each other? And it turns out this question actually came from somewhere else. I have a young adult family member who's in a graduate program, and I watched her pretty much do most of a group assignment communicating through text message, which baffled me. Like, how do you track all that? So it's probably more a sign of my age, but I wanted to know, what were they using to coordinate themselves? So what we found was they turned to their tried and true tools. Zoom. They'd already been using Zoom. Pre-pandemic, Zoom has been a part of these two programs since the beginning. In addition to Zoom, email, which seems to go along with everything we do. But the groups, we also noticed that the groups were using phone, traditional voice phone, text messaging, and Google Docs to coordinate their work together. And what this lets me know is that the students are still relying on some old standards, maybe some new standards, but they're relying on the standards in any case. So if I had to find a solution to do it all over again, I want to seek out something that keeps their go-to tools as the foundation of what we do. So overall, we wanted to know, what did they think of this assignment? This is what the faculty really wanted to know. Instructional designer, I wanted to know how this technology played out. The faculty wanted to know, what did they think? Would they do this again? Should we do it with the next cohort? What do you think? And so what they told us, we asked if they learned new information about a genetic respiratory condition, and overwhelmingly, yes, they did. They shared comments with us, so many comments, but here's one example of them, in that seeing a disease from another professional's lens actually gave them a greater understanding. That was something I saw in the comments when we were sharing in Slido earlier. The idea that while they would have different experience, different prior experience, different working experience, and now they're going to learn about a disease together, and they found that they were teaching each other different aspects of it, and that it really did impact how they would now treat a patient with that disease. That they understand more of what's happening behind it, either more of the genetic foundation of it, or more of what's actually happening in the pulmonary system of the patient experiencing it. We asked them if they're more confident in interacting with other professionals in healthcare now, and absolutely they said yes. This has helped to build their communication skills. They are feeling more confident in interacting with other professionals in the workplace, in their field work, on their day jobs, and more ready to enter the field in this new category of professional that they will be when they complete their program. And we asked them, do you think that we should repeat this assignment for future cohorts? And again, they said yes, stating they never would have learned as much as they did about this issue, about the diseases, the respiratory conditions that they were studying. They would have learned as much about them as they did without this assignment. So there is a lot of praise for doing this assignment overall. And at the end of the project, I like to say, what worked well from this? Because I think the students said, let's do it again. And so I asked myself, would I do it again? And if I did, what would I do differently? So I like to do this thing that I learned from elsewhere. I actually learned it in a facilitation management course. And that's that at the end of something, let's ask what worked well and what would I do to make it better the next time? And I have two big results from this. What would I do the next time? And the first one sort of came out of nowhere. It's one of those things where you find out something fun when you ask an open-ended question. You learn things you didn't know you wanted to know, but you do, and they share the best information. And that was about students meeting together earlier. They were assigned to groups in week 1, prompted to connect in week 2, but some of them didn't do it. I can't force them to meet. But maybe there's something we can do to let them know this is what the workload is ahead of you. Students told us that there was a good ramping up time in coordinating themselves. So a lot of that goes back to things that you mentioned earlier, that's scheduling. We have students who are healthcare professionals already and working different hours. You might be night shift, you might be on 3 and off 4. You have all of these different kinds of schedules, and trying to find a time to work together in a synchronous environment can be tough. Coordinating themselves as a group was a big lift in the beginning, and the groups said that they would prefer they had started a little sooner. There was some regret for action not taken there. And they also just mentioned the heavy workload attached to that they wish they had a little bit more time to do it. A seven week course is pretty compressed. They're used to that. But group projects over a 7-week course, when you're working a full-time job, can feel a little much. The other big takeaway was about cognitive load. On the one hand, we're working with graduate students who are expected to carry a pretty heavy workload. Given the nature of their studies, they're already working in their field. They've got a reasonable amount on their plate. But in terms of technology, we gave them a primary learning management system. We were using Blackboard at the time. They're pretty comfortable with it, but you're still navigating your courses. Email, a tool we're all facing. It's a part of our everyday life. They get a little extra with their course. They're getting announcements from their professors. Now they're talking to each other. We saw that they're relying on email to communicate with each other. More Zoom. They were already using Zoom. Now they're using it even more, not just to meet together as a group. They used it to record their presentations and submit them. Then we added on some slideshow. We asked them for a presentation, and most of them interpreted that, seems reasonably so, as creating some slideshow. So now we have that software that we hadn't really itemized in the list, but it was definitely necessary. And on top of this, and on top of a pandemic, we gave them another tool. We gave them a tool that had a separate login. It had new places for them to click. It had features, many features, and we only used a small amount of them. So it really wasn't, it was the best answer we had available at the time. But in hindsight, maybe with their input. And now, having looked at other options since then, I've had some time to think about it since. I asked myself, was it a good idea to add another tool? I couldn't control a pandemic. I still needed to find a way for them to meet. But with the lessons learned and the feedback from the students, I really think that if I had a chance to do it again, I'd like to find a tool that makes more use of the tools they're already using. But I don't want you to think, don't use Piazza. Piazza was a great tool. I might find a way to try to use it differently. I might see if there were pieces of it I could turn off, a way to make it work more smoothly with the LMS. And again, we're moving to Canvas now, so maybe there's a better LTI that I could work it in that way. Create the course in the LMS. Create the course in the LMS and enroll the students from both classes that way. We were also trying, it's one of those tricky little things. Could we do that and then just have the instructors manually move those grades over? They had to do some manual grading with this anyway. But we were also trying to keep that piece that's tied to PeopleSoft in the registrar's office and tied through to Blackboard. In some ways, I wish that we could have just put them all in one, just put them all in one place together. We did actually enroll all the students in Piazza. So they were all enrolled in it, but it's like being enrolled in Blackboard, but we're only going to use the discussion board. So it's just this one little piece that we were using. So what's happening next? Because I'd like to talk about that a little more. So I'm going to just catch us up to where we are. What happens next? Do I get to build it again? I'd sort of like to, and I'd like to just make a few tweaks to it. But right now, the respiratory care course is undergoing some changes. So not quite sure how the two programs are going to be able to work together. But what we have is a template, and we have good information to apply to repeat this. Whether it's these programs, whether it's respiratory care and genetic counseling, or some other programs. And while IPE is really a big part of healthcare education, I'm not sure it has to be limited to healthcare education. So that would be something fun to explore too. So one last thing on the assignment in particular, I just want to say how fabulous it was, how proud I am to be a part of a team that help turn out confident, educated healthcare practitioners who are ready to collaborate and put the patient at the center of it. Their comments are very focused on having patients get the best care they can because they're working together collaboratively. So I'm going to stop sharing this presentation right now. I'd rather see you. I'd rather see you than my screen. So I want to talk just a little bit. There's just a few of us here.
We have 5 more minutes, Gina.
We have 5 minutes left. So I want to open this up to your chat. And actually, I want you to feel free to share your video and unmute yourself if you'd like. And I'll open this up to you to say, what questions do you have? And what do you think about opportunities for interprofessional education at your institution? Don't all talk at once.
I'll pop on.
Thanks, Catherine. And you said you're at a chiropractic university, is that right?
Yeah, and I don't know if I have as much to contribute to the conversation as much as I have to thank you for this, because I can see we have a revision of the program coming up, and I can see the use of this in multiple places. So yeah, some cross-pollination.
Yeah, I can too. I don't know if others here have ever been a chiropractic patient before, but I, did something foolish at some point in time and went to see my chiropractor, and he worked with my primary care physician to really coordinate things and make sure that they we're working together to solve one problem, although they come at it from two different perspectives. All I got to say to you is at the end of doing the Christmas decorations, if you say, I just want to vacuum the house and then I'll be done, don't vacuum. Just don't do it.
Well, we also have a nutrition program, and there is conversation that happens. And in our clinic, there's certainly some integrated care going on for sure.
Yeah.
But on the teaching and learning side, that's this makes sense. Yeah.
Anybody else? Questions, comments, ways that you can see IPE happen?
I'll jump in. I teach at a community college, and I was interesting to hear. There's some aspects of what you went through that definitely can inform me about how I want to interface with other groups on campus, and so I think that's really fantastic. And I wanted to get your idea on what if you put out there what you were expecting from the students and have the students come up with methods for them to connect with each other rather than putting Piazza out there as maybe an option.
Yeah. I'd agree. After doing it once, it's interesting that now I feel like, oh, we've done it this way. I wish that we had left a little bit more up to them and found out. And I got to tell you that really it was probably last week sometime. I mean, obviously I've been thinking back about this project again, and I was thinking, we could have just created a website. We could have created a Google site and gave each group its own page to edit, and they could have shared their presentation. And I started thinking we could have just done it with Google Sites. What was I thinking? This instructors have to manually grade anyway. But we also have, there were some things that the faculty wanted to, that tended to put us more into that system. But after having taught it once, the faculty too, now are saying, oh yeah, we could, maybe we didn't need that after all. And I think it was really like dipping our toes in the water and saying they've all done it in person before. They had all, interprofessional education is an important part. The health sciences college at our university, interprofessional education is everything in healthcare education, it seems. But doing it for 2 fully online programs was something we hadn't explored before. So I think my time is waning, and I cannot even believe that I talked that long. And I know I have coworkers in here who are like, oh, sure you can. But I'm telling you, I did this a couple of days ago and I didn't talk that long. I just wanted to share for you, if you want to be back in touch, I'm going to share this real quick. Come on. Not Henry. Just my contact information. If you'd like to talk more about it, bounce some ideas around, it's where you can reach me. And I want to thank our conference organizers, and thank you, Heidi, for keeping me on track and taking care of things. Enjoy the rest of your conference.
All right, and please fill out the evaluation survey. It's in the chat, and you can access it from the other places as well. Thank you.
Somebody just joined us.
Yes, it's Joshua. I think he might have been here before, but then I'm not sure what happened there.
Oh, okay.
Joshua, we're just finishing. Maybe you're up for the next session or so.
Okay.
But I'm just closing down.
Yeah,
Okay.
no
Thank you so much.
I clicked on something that starts at 4, so I think it put me in here by mistake. So.
All right, well, I'm going to jump out so you can, I'm going to hit end, so you'll probably be kicked out, Joshua. So just click on the link again.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right, it's nice to meet you, Gina.
Yeah, nice to meet you. Thanks for your help. Bye.
Bye.